Just another thought that I have is personal discipline is is really, really important, and being able to disconnect yourself from the digital world.
Yeah.
Try leaving your phone away from you for an hour. If that makes you really uncomfortable, then I think there's some work to do there.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, Ron Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning! This is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening and or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, Ron Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory walks, I'm going to give some insight towards what I personally have been going through in my tenure. In my tenure, I'm acting like I've been here. I've been tenured in my experience as a podcaster. Oh, and it's probably one of the most forefront questions that people ask me when in terms of podcasting, and it's how to monetize. There's something that's called affiliate links. I don't like to do a whole lot of
Mhm.
affiliates. I have one affiliate, Cozy Earth, and I use them because I really like their product. But there's other ways to monetize a podcast. The sports gambling. If this podcast was a sports podcast, I've gotten the emails like, "Hey, start a sports podcast," and you can get a lot of upfront money, and they'll help you with production and all of that stuff because they really understood their call to action with the gamblers on the back end. Well, it's a little different with our podcast. In our podcast, I just was reading through an affiliate offering, and they were offering a good split. But again, I haven't tested the product. I didn't go through what they were offering, and I would feel inauthentic discussing or pushing an audience towards something that I've never experienced myself. However, there's other ways that you can monetize your podcast. And one is through products, goods, and services on Amazon. That's a little bit more work. That takes a little bit more savvy on your end, maybe even hiring someone to help you or having a coach to assist you. And it's not just for podcasts, though, they're using Amazon. And in the world of AI, that world has transitioned, the Amazon world. So whereas before you can get behind a product, something that you may be using, or like I'm using myself as an example, I wouldn't get behind a product that I didn't use. And you start pushing that product, right? And you never have to touch it. It ships from here and it goes to there, and boom, you play middle person and you get paid. But with AI and with all of the things that are moving forward, that affiliate possibility has transformed. And that's why this conversation that I'm going to have with Joshua Lee today is important, because he's going to really help keep us informed about the transitions and how there's simple tricks and tips that you and myself can do to help us stay current with this ever-changing affiliate marketing opportunity. How you doing, Joshua?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for guesting with us.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. If you don't mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Sure, yeah. So, as I mentioned, my name's Joshua Lee. I'm the founder and CEO of First Light Studios, and we drive multi-million dollar growth for brands on Amazon and Walmart. In the 4 years we've been in business, we've managed over 57 million in annual revenue, and we have an ex-Amazon team based in Seattle. And I think what you mentioned about affiliate marketing, it definitely is changing, but the number one thing that I tell brands and manufacturers is if you're not prioritizing your online, your company is likely going to die in the next 5 to 10 years because the demographic and the preferences that customers have changed so much, and it's digital first now. And even software is being impacted by AI. So just as old commerce, the physical transactions when you go to a store, right? That'll always work, but the growth opportunity is in digital. It's in online. It's in, generating affiliate sales. And even as a content creator, I think finding different ways to monetize and using tools like Amazon affiliate, it's a great way to do that. But yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
So let's start with Amazon affiliate. One of the problems that non people that don't have access to Amazon or to one of the major sports betting affiliates, they don't have a manager that can walk them through the door and they say, hey, we're going to give you $1,000 up front every month for the next 10 months. We'll give you a $50,000 a year up front, whatever. And then
Mhm.
we're gonna monitor how you drive traffic. And so we and with the affiliate, we usually have to push an audience to a project or push an audience to something.
Mhm.
What would you say from a consumer side? I know what you do for for your customer,
Mhm.
but from someone that
Yeah.
they're pitching to, how are you having that conversation about driving that bridge between a struggling person who or someone who's starting out, they may have a good audience but they just don't understand how to navigate the system, and an affiliate, an Amazon, who has all of these tools in place, but people don't know that the word is out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a misconception, and I think a big mistake that content creators make is that they find a group of brands that they want to support, that they like, that they're aligned with, but they pitch too early. They pitch too soon, and they reach out too soon. And there's a number of areas that you kind of have to get locked down on before you start going after brands that are a little bit bigger. Now, if it's a smaller brand, that could work, but the three-step process that we recommend is really locking in on your core audience. So if you're a content creator, podcaster, you're on Insta, you're doing a YouTube channel, you really have to understand your core audience. So you have to look at your metrics, demographic, sociographic, geographic location, and who are you actually talking to? Because that is who you represent, and that's what's going to attract you to the brands and the the folks that you're trying to get an affiliate deal with. Because some brands, they are really tight with that. They'll reject most affiliates, even if you have a great following. If you can't showcase and show that you're aligned, they're not gonna choose you. They're not gonna give you that chance. I think the second area is making sure that the content is really locked in. So there's a specific aesthetic that needs to align with theirs, and there is a specific content style that you should really be
Joshua.
gearing towards, whether that's through your posts, your reels, the way that you talk about the content, the way that you represent yourself, that needs to be locked in. And I think when you start, you can freestyle a lot of it, but eventually some of that's going to have to be scripted a bit. So there might be an intro that you memorize and you follow every time, or an outro, or a specific format that you follow, but there has to be some consistency in how you communicate, because that's what the brand and even the end user, someone who's consuming the content, it'll help them be able to follow consistently through time. That isn't always true. Like, I think in the younger generation, they really value raw content. So just speaking your thoughts and being raw with it, unfiltered, unedited, that is really trending right now. But a lot of times that may or may not be the case if you're going after a brand, unless you're pretty huge.
So here it is. You've been able to build your company. What was some of the things that you saw early on that these are must-haves for me when I'm sitting down with an Amazon, when I'm sitting down with a Spotify? What were some of the driving points? And I'm pretty sure you didn't start with a team, but once you got your team, you probably already had the system in mind and the system in place. Well, take me through that process. What gave you the courage, one, to start? Two, what gave you the courage not to quit?
That's a great question. I think part of the journey, and something that I always misunderstood, is that you have to feel good or you have to feel a certain way to go after a dream. But it's not about feeling, it's about taking action in the midst of fear or uncertainty. It's having the courage, which is not absence of fear, it's doing things despite of fear and being able to drive forward and believe in something that's greater than yourself. So that's the one misconception I had earlier on. I think for me, what it's come down to is really realizing that the growth is really not about the process, it's not about the system, but it's a leadership accountability issue. And it always comes from the top. So in the past, and something that I'm currently growing in, is being able to even lead myself and becoming a better version of myself and having a high standard for myself, which basically means being able to follow through on the things that I want to do. Things that I say, oh, I want to do this thing. I want to get up at 6 in the morning rather than say 7, right? You're actually able to do those things consistently. And that helps you develop confidence and helps you carry that to other larger things that comes up. Like, hey, I want to make, let's say it's like, hey, I want to make $1 million by the time I'm 30, or whatever the number is. Maybe it's 40 or 50, right? But if you can't build that confidence in yourself and lead yourself in what you want to do in the small things, it's going to be impossible to do it in the bigger things. So I would say that is really, there's no shortcut, no magic trick. There's no, you can't AI person development and leadership. And it's gonna take hard work, and it's gonna be a lot of doing things that feel uncertain and are uncomfortable for a long time.
So when I run back to you in your, if I read to you your resume, and I'm saying that you're working with an Amazon, you're working with a Spotify, you're working with customers driving in billions of dollars worth of revenue. And 4 years ago, was that the goal? Did you see yourself being able to do that? What was the mentality that helped you to find your niche in helping those customers when you're coming in as a, what some would consider a little guy?
Yeah. The answer is no. I couldn't have imagined doing what I'm doing back then. But what happens is, along the journey, you go to places you've never seen before. So
Hmm.
you start seeing things that you've never seen before, that you couldn't have ever imagined before, experienced before. That's why it's so important to continue going on the journey because there are things that you're gonna bump up against that you just haven't. So you would never know 4 years ago that that opportunity would come or that would come. But when I was in high school, I had a chance to meet a couple billionaires, and they basically said preparation is the key to success. And at the time, I never understood that, but now I understand what they were saying. And they were even saying, like, hey, you want to be prepared so that when the opportunity comes, you can strike it, basically. And that is so true. And really what that means is treating every day like you're about to break through. Like you gotta believe in that. I also want to mention that, I'm not super old. I'm older. I got young kids, married, been married for 8 years and got 2 and a 5-year-old. And so I'm just in the thick of it now in terms of raising a family. But I would say I'm more locked in than ever after really putting in the hard work to figure out what my God given gifts and strengths are and what I believe He's created me to do on this earth, which means that I'm thinking about in 10 years, in 20 years' time, what I am to accomplish. That way, I know where I'm going. If I don't have a path, if I don't have a goal in mind, I can't be focused in the present and I can't be working towards the things that I feel like I've been set aside for. And I would say I don't have a crystal ball on that. I can't say I heard from God that I have these things that I have to do, but I do think that He creates every single person with unique gifts and talents that will continue to be used in the future. And there are certain giftings and certain ways people are wired for. And the whole process is to go more into that and live into that. And I would say and highly recommend if you haven't spent the time to even try to think about your 10-year goal, that is a great start because the amount of people that haven't even tried, doesn't matter how young you are, just the effort of trying itself will give you a sense of clarity and direction and conviction that will help you go after what it is that you're after right now.
And I'm glad that you brought that up for two reasons. One, my next question was going to have nothing to do with the question I'm about to ask, but I am going to reserve the next question for the last question. When we think about technology and what it is that you're into, being a leading voice in a tech, technological world, most people who have a God sense, maybe in a religious setting or whatever, they tend to be the last persons to come and center around technology. How important do you think it is for you to be a thought leader in talking about good tech and giving good advice so that persons who may see it through a religious lens, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just Christianity, because we always give Christianity a bad rap, but there's tons of religions that are against technology and AI and the advancement, and they're looking at it as something that's negative. How important do you think it is for guys like you, guys like me? I'm a pastor and I talk about AI and I'm a voice that's crying out. How do you think how important do you think within the next 3 to 4 years, as we know that there's some things that's coming, and I think that we should have a voice at the table. How important do you think that is for you?
I think it's really important and something I don't think enough leaders consider. To your point, many people have written off AI as this evil thing, and I think it's quite the opposite. It's it's not an evil thing, but it can be used for evil, and it likely will be used for evil. So I think it's very important to really think about the ethics of AI and where to use it, how to use it, and how to limit yourself from using it. That's not going to stop companies from utilizing AI to increase productivity and to increase profits. That has always happened in the history of time where many leaders will basically do things in, they'll basically put profit first, people second, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's that's always been the case, but there are going to be leaders hopefully that put people first, profit second. And regardless of which company you're at, you're thinking about AI because you're thinking about ways to survive and to compete with your competitor. And so the the question of AI though comes in, it's something that I want to spend more time on, and I haven't been able to spend too much time on the ethics of it, but I think there are some areas of concern, such as, I'm a believer that critical thinking is a skill, and the two areas that AI is doing really well on is repetitive tasks, so they can automate those, and also the critical thinking. You like come up with a plan or come up with a sermon idea even, or come up with a strategy for doing this or launching this. It takes the critical thinking out of it. So that is a risk a little bit there, but I also think it shouldn't be a substitute for any relational activities.
Mm.
You should not you anything that takes away from actual relationship with people, with your spouse, with God, whoever your God may be or spiritual being, that the AI shouldn't be in the middle of that at all.
You're going around the country, you're speaking about what it is that you do. You're going on podcasts and you're leaning in heavy. And I really appreciate that. If you wanted to leave the audience with maybe one, two, or three things, if we can get it in, that your primary message, what they should be looking for, Amazon, Spotify, or how they should approach it, whatever it is that you would like to let the farewell message be.
Yeah. I would say I've actually put together a little internal guide that we use for our clients. It's on a Word doc, and I'm happy to share our process for how to get monetized and the best steps that content creators or people can do to actually start making money through affiliates and Amazon. If you want that copy, you could just find me on Instagram at one Joshua Lee ONE and just DM me affiliate, and I'll just send you the link. There's not going to be anything about AI in there, but
No,
if that, if you're looking for that, I'm happy to send that
no,
to you.
and I want the audience to understand too. We're like our conversation. We're still at the not. We're not in living heavy in the middle of AI. Do you think that? How do you foresee your industry changing within the next year or so, and how are you preparing for it? Because it's going to affect industries and things. And I know that's not what your mode of operation is right now. But are you Are you pulling back from it, or are you are trying to figure out how to lean into
If you work for yourself, or even if you work for someone and you're not leaning into AI,
it?
that that is a mistake.
Got you.
You have to at least understand how it works. and you have to at least understand how to use it, especially if you're doing a desk job, whether you're a business owner, whether you're an employee, whether you're a student. You have to at least understand what people are going crazy about
Gotcha.
and become a user of it. You really want to become a power user of it. Then, once you understand, you can make the decision for yourself how much you want to be involved in it. But you gotta at least start using it like a lot to fully understand what is it that people are talking about, what is it that people are raving about. I would say there's a mindset that you have to just kind of allow yourself and give yourself a space to just learn. Just be curious about it and learn. Even if you don't agree with it, it's not like you're changing your ethics around it,
Mm,
but
at least
you're learning this tool that people are using, and that's the way that I see it.
this is my last question. I know I said that the last one was my last question, but I thought about something as you were talking, and you're a very good interviewer, and I really appreciate um interviewee, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to educate our audience in terms of how the landscape of your industry is going to be impacted.
Mhm.
Is affiliate marketing in the next 5 years going to be dead or alive?
It'll be alive for sure.
Okay.
And sales for online is growing. It'll continue to grow. Everything from online education, so
Mm,
courses, those are continuing to grow. E-commerce, which we're heavy on, is continuing to grow. Even restaurants that are advertising on TikTok and blowing up. There are restaurants that are dying. They put up a TikTok video and there's lines out the door. They're using social media for those purposes. Everything online, that's really where a lot of the eyeballs and attention is going. The unfortunate reality is most people are addicted to their phone. They're checking it all the time. Parents, myself guilty, on my phone when I'm at home with my kids, right? So I have something I do where I put my phone in a cubby when I come home and I try not to check it until the kids go down for bed. That's what I do to really disengage my mind. But I would say, just another thought that I have is personal discipline is is really, really important, and being able to disconnect yourself from the digital world.
yeah.
Try leaving your phone away from you for an hour. If that makes you really uncomfortable, then I think there's some work to do there. And I'm not a huge fan of how the culture is so tied to everything digital and how often, whether you're in the bathroom, you're just scrolling, right? You're on the bus or, on the train scrolling, on the plane scrolling. I'm guilty of it myself, and there's a time and a place for it, but there's so many other ways to use your time offline, you know, time journaling, time learning more about yourself, leveling up yourself, and it 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 also breeds a lot of discontentment, which I think is the core of it. You you take yeah,
No, go ahead. No, I want you to finish your thought because I'm not gonna forget. Go ahead.
yeah, no, you end up taking what you see and unconsciously comparing yourself to different people, different circumstances, and that's totally not right because I think a lot of times there's so many things to be grateful for. And and that is a huge problem where people think they're not good enough, they're not pretty enough, they're not successful enough when you actually look back at your own life, you should be proud of your accomplishments and where you've come from and gone. But That's the last thing that I would say.
And you know what? And I'm glad we're ending on this note. I do think that there is going to be a space for people to actually be thought leaders in disconnecting from AI or disconnecting from social media, because there are emphasis, there's scientific data behind the overusage of the phone and how it affects the brain, how it affects the socioeconomic capacity of our communities, and all of these things. So even if you're if even if you lean towards anti-social, anti-AI, there's still going to be a lane for you to create, because what's happening is creating new neural pathways in the brain that are unhealthy. And we're going to need
Yes.
people who are thought leaders and parading others out of this unhealthy use of this thing, and me included. So there's lanes for both sides. So we can't look at this world that we live in, and it'll pace down. It'll find a setting. Right now,
It,
it's exciting
yeah.
and everybody's involved, and then
Hmm.
it'll pace down, and then people are like, oh, okay, it's just another post. Oh, okay, it's just another this. But there are lanes on both sides. So if you're someone who works in mindfulness and do all these things, start leaning into the studies about how AI or social media in itself is affecting the brain, for especially for you, for young adults under a certain age. Just left the barbershop, and there was this little girl waiting for her brother to finish his haircut. And when he got out of the barber chair, the father was in the chair, and immediately, like, she had the phone and she was watching it, and the father was in the chair, and every time the phone would die out, he couldn't put the password. He's running up and getting him the phone, and then when the brother gets out of the chair, he immediately goes to her and take the phone and say, "Give me the phone," because he knows the password. And they're like this on this big thing. She's That's daddy's phone, and they're like fighting because there's something neurologically happening in the brain because of too much time in front of the screen, and especially in our youth and young adults. And I know that they get fascinated by it in the same way that in my generation we were fascinated by the television, and they set us in front of the TV. But it does
Yeah.
have an effect on us, and I think, because I haven't tapped into the research, it may have more of an effect than even what the television was having.
Absolutely. And I think the big companies know that attention is currency.
Yes.
It's the screen time, it's the clicks, it's the watches. That is really the currency, and that's how you can actually start shifting some of that narrative in terms of giving companies power, and not power by choosing to consume or not to consume their content and products. I forgot what I was gonna say. I was gonna
No, I'm
have
sorry. I
one more
went on a
thing,
whole
but
long rant, but because you just tapped into something, so I apologize about
yeah,
that.
no, that's good. No, it's good. I I appreciate that and I agree with it.
There you have it, everyone. Listen, all of Joshua's information, even if you're interested in, first of all, we don't ask you for Venmos, Cash Apps, or any of those things. We try to lead with value. And oftentimes, as in today, we do. If you are in the content creation field and you're listening to this episode, all of Joshua's information is in the description. We ask that you support our guest, because that's our currency back to our guests. They're giving their time, they're giving their information. Our currency back to them is having you all who listen go and support them. And in you supporting them, you're getting value back, because he's not asking you for anything. He's showing you a blueprint on how you can be successful in advancing what it is that you are attempting to do. You don't have to go at it alone. You don't have to walk with your head down. You don't have to walk making excuses. Your currency to me is to hit subscribe and share so that other people can hear this conversation. Don't be stingy. And finally, walk in victory. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.